right. Go ahead,
All
Ricky.
right. Welcome to episode whatever this is. There's number 12. We've got a lot to cover today. First off, we're going to come over with some election stuff, talk about some roles and other bounties that are available for members to fill for helping the elections run smoothly. We'll touch on some other stuff for the elections. Then we're going to talk about the treasury distribution. We've actually come to a consensus on that, so we'll share what that is. And then we're going to touch on talking vision, strategy, and putting together a proposal to the ENF. If any of the community has any comments or things they would love to see covered today, please leave us some comments and we'll try to get to them as well. So feel free to contribute things you'd love us to discuss, and if relevant, we'll talk about them. But yeah, we're going to move pretty fast today and try to get a lot done. So in that spirit, I'm going to pass it to Javi to kick us off.
Thanks, Reiki. A week from Saturday is our election. So we've been working hard and preparing and testing, making sure everything's going to run smoothly. I think it's a really important election this term. So I'm really excited about next week from Saturday. And there's a couple of housekeeping and items that we need to discuss quickly around the election. Number one, historically, we've had a community room where the entirety of the participants can assemble and discuss the election as it unfolds. And this community room is usually emceed by an individual. In previous elections, we've appointed someone from the Eden members community, such as Michael O'Sullivan, who fulfilled that role last time. Dominic Thomas has also emceed the election. And for this election, I think it shouldn't be any different. And we'd love to have someone who can MC the community room, the community Zoom room, which is also recorded and it's also really fun to watch. And I think for historical archives, we should definitely have a recording of this election, which seems to be really interesting. And I'm really hope we can have a fun and moderated environment we can all participate in. So I think that MC role is really important. We should extend an invitation to any Eden members who are interested in being the MC for the next election to make themselves known if they're interested.
Can we put up some candidates right now? I have one. I would love to see Brandon MC. I've loved how he's been moderating and showing up in the group chats so far. So if Brandon wants to, but does anyone have any other suggestions for potential MCs?
I'm seconded for Lovejoy.
The one challenge we just have to keep in mind is that if someone's emceeing, it might interfere with their ability to participate. So we just sort of have to be cognizant of that. It's possible, but it can be challenging. Right? Just keep that in mind.
I don't have any specific names. I don't want to put anyone in the hot seat and say, oh, you should MC this, but I think that definitely something we want to communicate, that we're looking for someone to MC this next election. And historically, there's also been a bounty for fulfilling that role. So if CDs agree that we would pay someone for their time to do this job, we don't expect them to do it for free. We can come up with some sort of mechanism to compensate them for that role. And I think that's appropriate. It can come out of the budget.eden OPEX fund through an MSIG from the CDs. If we agree to a bounty amount for, taking a full Saturday to moderate this group, I'd love to see Lovejoy involved. He's a great communicator, and I think he's very well aware of everything that's going on in Eden, so that'd be great. There's another aspect which I believe.
What bounty size are you thinking, Javi? Do you have one?
Well, that depends on what we're getting in return, because I know Dominic in previous elections did an amazing job of even coming up with like a report of what occurred and really delivering a lot of useful information after the fact, after the election, and did a lot more than just MC, right? There was a lot of other stuff that was put into place. And if that's part of the role we're expecting, and if people are willing to offer that, then I think the contribution should be I'm trying to find the right words here, but basically proportional to the amount of the level of effort that's been invested into this, right? So I don't have a fixed number in mind. I think we can look back at historical costs. I don't know if Michael charged us something last time. He did an amazing job as well. He's also a very respected voice.
What do you think of this proposal? We put a range. I'm putting numbers out there anywhere from 300 to 1500 as a range that we could look to compensate here. But put your proposal together of what you would provide. So say you'd MC for the day it's a mandatory of what we need, but maybe you'll also put content together. You'll talk about everything that happened and some whatever you would like to bring as an MC and whatever package that looks like. Then you put a dollar value on it and bring that proposal to the delegates within the next 2 weeks. Actually, I guess we have 1 week. It's coming up fast. So ASAP, and it could be a pretty short proposal, and then we'll make a quick judgment on that. Any changes to that proposal? What do you think, Avi?
I like that. We definitely want to make it something worth people's time, and depending on the offers we get, we can come up with a decision as a group. There's basically one critical aspect, and that is having a Zoom link for a community room that we can run for hours, that gets recorded, that then gets published, and to moderate that Zoom link group. That's basic. There's one thing that the UI for Eden has a link to a Telegram pinned message, and that Telegram pinned message contains the link to the Zoom room. And that is static on our UI. It's the Telegram message hasn't changed since the beginning. And someone needs to update that Telegram link. I believe it's Lovejoy who can do that, actually. So we might have to reach out to him anyway and be like, hey, we need to update that pinned message to point to the right Zoom room. And we need to make sure that that Zoom room is operational and people can assemble in that room for a long period of time. So that for me is the bare minimum out of this role, right? Get the Zoom room, get the recording, make sure we can moderate that room and keep it fun and keep it informative and give everyone a chance to talk. That's what we want, right? So yeah, that's what
we
need.
have the record bot in the Discord, and we could put it in there anyway, but should we use the Discord as the community room instead of the Zoom link?
I mean, that would be a break from tradition. I don't know. I'm personally more inclined towards going with what we've done before because we tested it and it works. Discord might be a barrier to entry. I don't know. I really don't know. I don't want to make last minute changes to the way the dynamics are. That's my personal opinion. We just need to make sure that pin message on Telegram is pointing to the right Zoom room and that someone can admin that room during the election. Any extras from there? Anything else I'd like to offer? Wonderful, right? But that's the bare minimum. So we do have to talk. I think it's Lovejoy. I'm almost certain that has that pin message. I'm going to follow up on that with you guys so we can coordinate with him. The other thing along these lines, I mean, if we're ready to move on, I think we want to move quick, but yeah, is that during the election, there's a few smart contract actions that need to take place. Most of these actions can be called by anyone. And one of them involves seeding entropy into the randomization through submitting Bitcoin headers to the smart contract. We want to make sure we have as much entropy contributing to the randomness selection as possible. So anyone's free to call some of these smart contract actions, and we've seen before that people take it upon themselves to just call them. However, we can't really depend on just anyone doing that. We need someone appointed to be kind of like our tech support during the election. We had this role in the last election. It was appointed to Lacid, who's a member of Adenia, who's very familiar with the smart contracts. Basically, Lacid was available on Telegram during the election for any questions people might have and make sure that all the different smart contract actions get called on time, elect process, elect seed, distribute the funds at the end. A lot of these require someone to be kind of doing things in the background, right? There was also a $200 bounty for this role that was put out by CDs, which was awarded to Lacid because he was the only one who basically applied for it in the week time that we gave, and he did a great job doing that. So apart from the MC, we need like tech support. I don't do it because I'd like to participate in the election and be available. So that's one other thing that Chris mentioned, right? If someone's doing these things, they can't really be in the election. But we want to make it a fair process, so anyone who's interested can reach out and say, hey, I can do that. I'm more than willing to do that. We've got some documentation on what needs to get done during the election. Happy to share that. But we also need kind of like a tech guy during the election.
So then same proposal, put up this is an RFP, bring your proposals to any one of the chief delegates and we can make a decision within the week. So does that work, Avi?
That works.
Cool.
Now, the other thing that, well, it's probably we need to talk about is we have two updates to our smart contract. One is the remove member function. This is part of the dispute resolution that was ratified by us at the beginning of our term. That has been coded, that has been tested on the Jungle testnet. We have a updated version of Eden Smart Contracts that includes the remove member function. And the other update in our smart contracts is the issuance of a soul-bound token for those members that vote during the election. We've tested that on the Jungle testnet. We've also got another mock election scheduled for next Tuesday to test this once again. We want to test a lot of this on mainnet as well in the next week. However, the smart contracts updates will require CDs to sign off on the MSIG for updating the contract. I personally I'm very excited about both of these updates to the smart contract. I think dispute resolution brings a lot of trust to keeping the members we want within Eden, and the reputation system and the civil protection system that Jesse's been working on with the soul-bound tokens also adds a tremendous amount of value to Eden. I don't like making smart contract changes 1 week before the election. I'll put that out there. But if we do want these features available, we can push them through. We've been testing them. We've been making sure that they're ready. I can, after next Tuesday, when we do our last round of testing, I can say, well, I feel comfortable that these are ready to go. However, it does require consensus from this group, and I just wanted to bring that out there. If we do want these features available for the next election, it would require updating smart contracts. And happy to share the code with everyone who's interested in knowing what we're changing. Happy to provide any more information around smart contract changes. But ultimately, the decision we need to make is, do we want to update these contracts prior to the election?
So I can jump in a couple details here. Some considerations we're making. We understand that this is really close to the election. So we've made some design decisions that are more conservative for this election in terms of issuing these soulbound tokens. And the main thing to know is that instead of directly connecting the vote action with the issuance of the SBT, we've opted to issue the SBTs after the election's over. So we can record the vote actions. They're not linked. There won't be an extra action during the election, which does bring some risks. And so eventually, in a more mature system, we can directly link the vote action, so you get that SBT right after you vote. And so the plan is to issue these SBTs after all the voting is done. So in terms of what goes on during the actual election, this update requires no changes on that end. And so just a more conservative approach to start.
Yeah, we've been fairly risk adverse. Smart contract changes, you have to be careful with. We're testing, making sure we're not introducing anything risky prior to the election. We're having a mock election on Tuesday. Anyone's invited to join with a Jungle 4 testnet account and participate in testing these new features on the smart contracts. And We're also going to test this Telegram bot from Luca and have an idea of how this would look like in a real election scenario. There's been some testing done, but not with a mock election. So we've integrated that into Tuesday's test. That's another thing which we should decide, do we want this for this election or for the next election? We can definitely push the changes as soon as the election is over, and then that gives us more time to, not introduce something risky right before the election and fix anything. I'll let you guys think about it because we have until Tuesday that we run these tests that I can come back and say, guys, we've tested it. This is good. This is ready to go. We've done our part of the job. Now it just needs to be deployed, and I can kind of like sign off on it. As of now, we made some changes. After every time we change it, we test it. After it works, when we tested it, I'll say, okay, it's ready. But think about it. Do we want to deploy these changes right before the election? You'd rather wait until after the election.
So one of the considerations here is if the bot has been tested and it's working and it works great, there's still another consideration about a logistical risk. If people are going onto the UI and they're seeing all the steps in regards to Zoom, and this is on Telegram, and so basically if the bot's working and the UI is not updated, it feels to me that it's too early to integrate it into this election. It seems to me to make sense that let's get the bot tested, and then next term, let's change the UI to reflect everyone to go to Telegram bot. So that's where I stand personally on Luca's bot right now.
Yeah, I second that. I think we need several weeks to socialize the change and make sure everyone's aware of it, and definitely change it in the UI so people aren't getting told conflicting things. Absolutely. Also, with these changes that are happening, issuing an SBT, etc., they're not in the bylaws. So it's another reason for maybe not changing the code right now, because we would need to add it to the bylaws and then need to get ratified, which that's like 2 other cycles down the line. So there's a part of that process that I think maybe we missed, that you get issued an SBT and actually adding that. But I don't know if we need to add that. It's just something to think about. I think if we really tested the SBT process too, it'd be great to do that ASAP. And this is a cool election, so if people are able to have their first NTT being part of this election, it's a beautiful story. That's all my thoughts on it. And maybe I'll pass it to Chris if he's got anything he wants to bring.
Yeah, thanks. So Jesse, I'm definitely with you, and as well, Ricky, about the UI confusion for Luca's bot. I mean, I was part of the test group. It looks like good. I think it'll be great, but I think it's still too soon. Like, we do need to socialize it and get people aware that, hey, this is different, and change the UI. So I think delaying that probably makes sense at this stage. In terms of changing the code, Hattie, based on what you're saying, sounds like test on Tuesday, make sure it works good, and then look to do it. If it's not going to affect the election, which it sounds like it won't, because it's sort of external to the election processes themselves, I don't think it requires a bylaw change, only because it's not really changing any of the rules of engagement. It's just providing an NTT, which anybody can do at any time. It's not really something that probably needs to be codified. If there's use case to those NTTs that are benefiting the Eden community explicitly, and then maybe those use cases go there if it's some sort of rule that we want to impose. But I don't personally think it's a big deal at this stage. Like, I think it's to help the community. I mean, there's no nefarious intention here. It's to give you a soulbound token, which is going to be one of hopefully these great use cases of this community. So I like the idea of pushing that along and using this election to really test it to that extent.
Yeah, one great thing about the bot is it does create rooms for everyone on Telegram, and then they can coordinate. Oh, should we use Zoom, or should we just record it here? Okay, so I mean, perhaps there's a way of introducing the concept of the bot without necessarily having these 2 conflicting approaches, whether to use a Zoom room or to just record it all on a Telegram voice call. So I like to see how it goes on Tuesday. If anything goes wrong, I would say let's not do it. And if we can kind of limit the availability of rooms where people can join to discuss and vote to just one option, I think that's the safest way to go.
So if I can jump in here, one of the things during the first test of the bot that Luca mentioned is that Telegram rate limits certain actions. And when you have all these people and you're dividing them into rooms. Luca mentioned that we don't really have enough members, that he's not worried about the rate limiting issue, but eventually we may get there. So it's just like another consideration that we're not able to replicate in these tests. Even on the test on Tuesday, we don't have, we had maybe 10 people in the first test. We're going to have the same amount in this next test on Tuesday. And so we're like, the real test is maybe we'll have 100 people in the election going to rooms. So the tests here are a little bit different because we really should be testing it with more people. But I understand that it's hard to get a lot of people into a test. Whereas like the SBT thing doesn't require, like, it's just totally different parameters. It's not reliant, or it's not rate limited by the amount of people that are participating, from what I understand. So there's just another consideration to throw out there.
All right, so then I'll move on from this topic. We can follow on from this after Javi gets some experience on Tuesday, and then we can chat about what we think would be best. Any other thoughts before we move on? Javi, do you have anything else to add about the elections? What's needed?
No, I think, we are running short on time. So that's my primary focus right now. And I'll be reporting back to you guys on what we learn and how I feel about this. And hopefully we can move quickly. I do hope we can get some MC role defined as soon as possible. So looking forward to everyone's help in defining that. And maybe someone can take the lead.
If it's also helpful, I can state here, I would be happy to play the MC role as a fallback. So if no one makes a proposal and we need one, I'll chalk that into my contribution for the funds that have already been paid, and I'll just do it. So then we know that it's covered and we can see if we get other proposals that are better. So in summary, we need that MC role proposals. We need proposals for tech side. That sounds like it has about a $200 bounty. And we'll know more information about the smart contract change and the test bot, or the Telegram bot, which is awesome, by the way, on Tuesday to see if it's ready for prime time.
So should we meet on Wednesday then, if we're going to be, because if we meet on Friday and we want to promote the election a little bit, it's going to be too late. So I propose our next meeting should be on Wednesday.
Sure. I like that. Yep. Head nods around. Great. Next meeting's Wednesday. All right, we have something else to cover because we did come to a consensus on changing the Treasury disbursement percentage. So I'll pass it to Chris to introduce that and go from there.
Sounds good. Yeah, we're going to do something radical. We're going down to 2%, everybody. So just kidding. I know I'm funny. Okay, so yeah, we're going to just there'll be that one shock moment for anybody watching. They're like, what?
Yeah, smart contract won't let you do that.
No, I know. That's why I'm kidding. Okay, so I've run some more numbers based on kind of a manual calc on the USD money raised for each of the previous 4 terms while we're in the 4th. So we've looked at the EOS received by delegates and chief delegates explicitly, and now we're looking at the USD value. So term 1 CDs received just over $16,000 US, and that is not including the head chief delegate, Aaron, who received much more than that. Term 2 CDs received $5,600. Big disparity. A lot of that is because the Treasury became reduced over 6 months and the EOS price really dropped. So that just really shows the great change there. Term 3 CDs received $10,930. And so they did pretty good considering, and that's also part because of the distribution rate part way through their term was increased to 15%. Term 4 CDs, where we are today, are anticipated to receive somewhere over $14,500-ish. So this will be less than the most, which is term 1, but certainly more than the previous 2. So that in consideration, and we want to kind of keep this train rolling and give as much resources as we can to delegates. The suggestion is to go with 11% distribution rate. So that's less than 15, definitely much more than 5. And so this, and so that would work out somewhere around if there are 4 chief delegates, which is a possibility, they receive 16,500 EOS roughly during their term. So it's a sizable chunk. Again, price of EOS will really determine the USD value for that. If there's 5 CDs, it will be just over 13,000 EOS for their term. So that's basically it. And again, so we don't know if it's 4 or 5. I think that in terms of like the being prudent use of capital, there could be 4, in which case this will be more than we got, and there could be 5, which would be slightly less. But then price of EOS factored into that, it could be more or less as well. So that's the proposal, 11% distribution rate for the next term.
And we have consensus on that, and I assume, Javier, that we need to sign off on that. And I guess we can do that on Wednesday.
And whenever we're ready, I can prepare an MSIG for that. I think it'd be valuable to share the spreadsheet that Chris prepared, and to also justify this number and how we arrived there. It's not an arbitrary number. It's something we've thought about for many weeks. And not just propose the MSIG, but also have some backing information as to how we arrived at that consensus.
Yep, I can do that. I'll polish up the spreadsheet. I mean, hopefully there's no mistakes in it. I think that's fairly accurate, but I'll prepare that so we can share it, for everyone can see it, and I'll update it because I don't have the graph for the 11%. I just did the numbers, so we'll show that in comparison to the others. And just so everyone knows, by the way, WAXA isn't here today. So for these decisions, technically we are within our rights as CDs. 4 out of 5 can make these decisions. So certainly we value WAXA's opinions, but we can still make these decisions with who we have, just so that's clear.
So I saw a comment from Lovejoy, radical proposal, those who are elected pay into the treasury. And I just want to say that that's totally technically viable right now. You can claim your funds, deposit them back into the treasury. The memo has to say donate. So the smart contract actually adds that into the treasury. But if any elected delegates say, hey, you know what, I'm just going to put my funds back into the treasury and allow other members to make use of them on the next term, totally something we can do with the smart contracts as is. So it's really up to each delegate if they'd like to do something like that. Like if they're more focused on governance and not WPS, well, fine. Don't take the money, put it back into the treasury. Totally up to you.
So what happens if you send money into the treasury without the memo donate?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the balance of the account isn't necessarily the Eden treasury, right? So we can have funds in the account that aren't in the treasury. If you want to donate to Eden, there's 2 ways to do that. One is through a token transfer. The memo must include the word donate only. That's it in the memo. Smart contract will pick that up, add that to the treasury. If you send funds to the treasury but did not add the donate memo, you can then call the donate action, which needs to be called from the account that deposited originally, and specify the amount you'd like to donate to the treasury, and that will then be considered in the next distribution. So just sending money into the account doesn't necessarily increase the treasury. There has to be a donation action that goes along with it as well.
What I'd love to see there is to track that. So just to send a completely useless, valueless token back in the same quantity for everyone who donates, just so we're tracking who's donating. And maybe that token turns into something at some point. That could be interesting. But anyway, future stuff. Awesome. Any other thoughts or questions about that before we move on? Jesse, Javi? Sweet. Okay, so another big thing we wanted to touch on today was wrapping up our term. We had talked about putting a proposal on chain. So we're going to put an MSIG together to the ENF, requesting funds as a grant and putting together a roadmap of what we might use those funds for. So following a very typical grant process that the ENF is used to and appreciates for funding this, governance experiment called Eden. That's, if we succeed, fundamentally important and groundbreaking for EOS. Should we fail, we learned a lot, so also really great for EOS. So it makes sense for us to receive funding as kind of like the R&D for decentralized governance on EOS itself. So that's kind of the general theme we can go in a direction towards. So I'll pause here. I have some more thoughts I can bring, but I actually want us to all be able to take a moment to opine on this. And if anyone else has any feelings or thoughts, please put them in the comments now, and we'll make sure we share them too. And we can just do a roundtable of generally sensing on this. What might we bring to the ENF as a very practical grant to help fund our work here and give us more of a, a monthly burn rate, if you will, as long as we're hitting certain targets. So anyway, that's the general thing. I'll send it to Chris, and we'll go to Javi and Jesse, and I'll pick it up from there.
Yeah, thanks. I think it's a great idea. This is one of the criticisms or suggestions, I suppose, we've received in the ongoing dialogue and discussion around receiving more support from the ENF. The question always comes back to, well, where's the MSIG? Fine. Okay. Yeah, I think this is a great idea. Let's put up an MSIG. We've done informal and verbal formally requests in the past. So I think this is a great idea. I guess I have a question, like, in terms of the proposal and the use of funds and the roadmap, is that something that will be maybe like hashed on the IPFS and then linked in the memo, or any thoughts on how we sort of present this as being as utilizing the blockchain as much as we can?
I don't know if it's necessary for IPFS for two reasons. I don't think our proposal is concrete. I think our proposal is fluid and evolving with routine feedback. So I think if we put a link to the Google Slides, for example, happy to move away from Google. I think they're evil. So if people have better options, fine. But anyway, some collaborative tool, probably better Notion in the future. Anyway, that we can constantly update with community feedback. So we're not saying this is the fixed Eden roadmap. We have something tangible, concrete enough that we could already refer to. It has KPIs. There's a general understanding, i.e. where we're at with the 3 Horizons proposal right now. But that's going to constantly evolve over time. So we could say, this is where we're headed. This is what you can expect from us. This is how we're spending the funds in a general way. But this is constantly evolving with feedback, which is literally the point of our experiment here, decentralized governance. So we're not going to fix something to IPFS and say this is what we're doing, because also then I don't think we have the authority to speak for the community necessarily. So I don't know if we can even put that together, if you will. So yeah, that's my opinion on it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So then in the memo, we put a link to some editable doc, Google Slide, whatever, that could also cross-reference other live documents. Does that make sense?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Well, yeah, so great idea. I fully support it. I think having a roadmap and a use of funds and an explicit, clear value proposition as to why this is beneficial for the ecosystem and why this can help bring in more users. We had a great Twitter Spaces today with Helios, and we talked about the idea that Eden can be an absolute value add to the EOS ecosystem if it becomes a mechanism by which more individual humans and users join EOS because they want to participate with this tool. Whatever instantiation, we have one version of Eden right now. I think we'll eventually have many versions. We do, in fact, have more than one. And that brings humans into this. And that's a value add because more people come into the ecosystem. They got to have accounts. They're going to participate in other dApps. They're going to buy tokens. And that's a win-win. So I think certainly that seems like a really great value prop that we should be highlighting among many others. So fully support. Thank you for taking the initiative on this, Ricky. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. Before we move on, I did want to just bring up value adds. I think that's really important here. How are we actually serving EOS? So a couple ways that I think are worth mentioning directly is research and development. So everything we're doing on the forefront of decentralized governance, all the experiments we're running here, that's helping EOS learn, which is also having us be at the leading edge of that. So as brilliant minds keep coming into Web3, like where do they want to go? Like what communities do they want to go in? So this is where we could start painting ourselves and becoming, at the forefront of this evolution of decentralized governance, which is a huge field. It's an exciting field to be in. And I think that's exactly the people that EOS wants to be here and to be attracted into EOS is people who are really going to help EOS become better and Antelope become better and help us be continually pushing the boundaries of what we can do, with this technology. So I think funding these kind of skunk works R&D labs is something, every big ecosystem does, and that makes sense for Eden to be that. Like all of our conversations are constantly like training us on how to do governance better. So we're also training up members in the community to be better, citizens, if you will. So even when, look at the founding fathers in the States, the first things they were considering is you can't have democracy with an uneducated public. So we need to have systems like the most important role for the nation state. I think this was like George Washington making this comment. He said the number one role for the federal government is to educate citizens on the process of governance. He was like, that's the number one most important thing we need to be doing, is to teach people how to be, free humans. Because if we don't have that, then we'll elect kings again. And that's what he was like in that position. Like, the people wanted him to be a king again and go back to that because it was easy. So he said the number one most important thing is we have to teach people how to be free. So I think that's something else that Eden and EOS could be doing as a community, is educating on the process of governance by experimenting with it, being at the forefront of it, building tools for it, etc. So I think these are some of the value propositions that we haven't spoken about. I think there's a lot of obvious ones with the tool building and making it more accessible for communities to use our tools. But I think one that's not being fully, I'll leave it at that. I think I'm speaking too much. So I'm going to pass it over to Javi to pick it up.
Well, I think the Treasury is, the fuel for this community, and CDs should always find ways of managing the Treasury in the most prudent and the long-term prudent way, and with a long-term vision. I think that requesting funds for the Treasury should be something all CDs do. I think that the ENF has stated that they're supportive in previous conversations, and if we want to put on an MSIG, see what happens, I'm happy to support that. I mean, it's not really up to us, is it? I mean, we can make the MSIG, let them decide. I think that the potential for this project is enormous for Eden, and I'd like to see as many diverse contributors. And the more funding, the more rocket fuel we have to reach escape velocity, right? I agree with that. So that's, I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, I'll jump in here. I support us putting up an MSIG. They can take as long or as little as they want to act or not act on that. My view is that we need a lot more funding for these two major projects that will kill multiple birds in one stone. Like Reiki mentioned, decentralized governance is a route that I think is justifiable and can provide a lot of value. I've been working on more of like a business-centric route with civil protection. That's another huge potential industry. And I care very much about supporting other languages. And so those two routes are like an incentive or an excuse to join Eden and to join EOS across multiple languages. And so I'm a huge supporter of multiple Edens in multiple languages. We tried to do some polls. There wasn't a huge turnout, but those who did turn out, we do have support for small sample size. But yeah, in my view, the Treasury is too small to do everything that we want to do. And I think we have two great routes to go. And so, yeah, let's give it a shot.
All right. Community that's watching, please put in any comments or questions if you have anything about this proposal. And I will share some thoughts in screen format here, and we can pause me at any point, any one of you, if you want to, if you have anything to share. Okay, sharing this now. Can you see it?
I'll bring it up. Here we go. Yep, it is there.
All right, yeah. I'm not in for design right now, so this is just putting words down. And this is, version 0.1 of the proposal. So this is also kind of splitting the difference between the Eden protocol, which is running that worker proposal system right now, i.e. Genesis.treasury, or sorry, the Treasury budget. So I think it's Genesis.Eden, right? That's the main Treasury. What is the?
Yes.
Yeah. And that just got a 500K donation, right? So that one's, I think, well funded. I think we can make this proposal, and I'm open to what you guys think here, is we're making it to the OpEx budget for then delegates to fund the Eden DAO. And the Eden DAO is more, how Eden's being organized, funding the circles, all the different projects that are emerging in Eden, make sure they have sustainable budgets to move forward, and help us become more effective as an organization and ideally revenue generating. So this is helping us get to that point, is what we're kind of requesting funding from the ENF for, at least in this proposal. So what I put together now is we just got the 500K donations. So it seems like a nice number, 500K commitment. Maybe not paid all at once, so similar milestone based at 500K a month, or sorry, 50K a month for the next 10 months. And that this actually goes into the OpEx budget for delegates or CDs, depending on how that OpEx budget ends up being run, to fund the Eden DAO. So then what we're saying is then the governance process is bringing forth the wisdom, not necessarily distributing the funds for them to be able to then tap into this bucket at about 50K growing a month. Thoughts?
Yeah. In regards to the donation going into the OpEx account, I don't think we have enough supporters that want to have the OpEx account play a larger role in the way Eden and Chief Delegates operate. I think that it shouldn't. I think that it should go to the Treasury, just because that's more conventional. That's where other donations. I mean, even the last donation, most of it went in the Treasury. I understand that we were very much thinking about having the OpEx play a larger role. We opted not to propose that in these bylaws because we basically realized that there's a lot more kind of smaller housekeeping things that we wanted to get past first. Perhaps that's in a proposal for season 5, who knows? But I think it's personally think it's too early to ask right into the OpEx.
Yeah. I'm happy making that change just because I'm already agreeing with you. So does Chris or Javi, do you have any reasons we should keep it funded to the OpEx or change it to just sticking with the main Treasury?
I really like the idea of kind of phasing this out and having like a long-term commitment that can be based on milestones. And I think that spinning up new Edens in different parts of the world or different languages is part of the original vision of Eden and something that we can execute. We have the ability to run the software ourselves. We've learned to take control of the platform ourselves as a community and fund that. Now we can replicate that with other languages. And those languages will need funds to get up and running, to cover their OpEx. Those Edens will also need a treasury, right, to incentivize people to join. And that doesn't have to be done in one fell swoop with one huge donation. You can say like, hey, we've got enough people here already that speak Spanish, or we have enough people here already that speak Korean, and they've all signed up. We've got a Genesis group to start inviting members and inducting them into this group. Now we need funds to make this happen, right? So it doesn't have to be like, hey, give us money, we'll figure out what to do with it later. We can like, hey, we've already got buy-in and the community is already aligned to make this happen. You don't have to give the money straight to Genesis Eden. You can also fund these other languages, right? And I think there's a lot of stuff we can do without the money right now. But having the commitment, saying like, guys, we're not going to waste our time gathering all these troops just to hear like, oh no, I woke up like not really in the mood to do this today. I don't know, whatever, right? Like we need some sort of communication. Like we don't want to work as a completely separate entity from the broader ecosystem. And I think that dialogue is really important. And if we can establish a roadmap that serves everyone, then I think then we can definitely ask for funds and have that commitment. I mean, we don't need the money right away, but we do need a commitment to some degree. That's my just my thoughts. But I'll let everyone else chime in.
I'm totally with you on that. I think there's this argument that I've heard that says this current Eden doesn't have its house in order. So why would we ever consider starting other Edens? And I think that's the exact reason why we want to start other Edens. because this Eden doesn't have his house in order. So let's give other Edens a chance to see if they can get theirs in order. One of the fundamental issues with this current Eden that I think everybody with their eyes wide open can recognize is the origin story and then the flip that we had halfway through, right? We had this community that were centered around Dan and this vision, and then he left. And we've been floundering now as a DAO, like this decision-making by committee about what our purpose is and our North Star. And like, Reiki, you've been like kind of really diving into this, and it's hard. Like, as you're saying, it's very difficult. Like, there's so many different views. How do you coalesce around one thing? It's incredibly difficult. Starting other Edens is an opportunity to see, well, what happens if an Eden starts and it's very clear, it's learning from the mistakes and the problems we're having, and they create a new iteration with a very clear North Star, a very clear purpose, a very clear job description of chief delegates and level 1 delegates and so on. And so I think that's, if this thing is an experiment about governance, an experiment about bringing more people into the EOS ecosystem because of this governance tool, then we need to experiment on it. Like, we just can't sit here and spin our wheels and have new people join the ecosystem for all of a couple of weeks and start just throwing wrenches and everything. Like, that's great, it's fine, but we're not going to get anywhere. I mean, I think there's really something to be said about starting new and supporting that growth of starting new. And so I'm with you. I think we should have, maybe in this MSIG, are some deliberate, explicit use cases of this money is to start other Edens and make it that a really big priority, not the only priority, but certainly one that should be explicitly there. And I would think would be accepted by the ENF as a very a reasonable approach to what we're trying to do.
Yeah, absolutely love that. I also want to bring a growth structure here, just something for us to be mindful of. We can grow by branching out when we reach those cultural differences. And we can also grow by fractaling in. So Eden, the protocol itself, the process of showing up to an election, participating in the work of proposal system, getting an NTT, etc. I think that's an open community. We keep it really low boundary to get in. Anyone can come in, civil protect themselves, etc. But then we have circles within Eden, and then circles are closed membership. If they want to be, some circles can choose to be open membership. And this is where then things like codes of conduct, how we collaborate together, what your North Star is, what you're trying to achieve, everything like that gets really clear. And there could be 100 of those, and maybe even conflicting opinions or whatever, it doesn't matter. There could be hundreds and thousands within Eden itself. So then Eden itself just becomes, I think this is what Luca is sensing into, and I think there's a lot of wisdom here. And that's what I'm kind of separating between the Eden protocol, which is again this work proposal system, selecting delegates, distributing a treasury, civil protection. And then all the projects can become circles within Eden. So all of these different tools from the Eden process itself, like running the infrastructure for that, helping other communities run it, that could be a circle. Another circle around art collection and gamers or whatever, right? So this is then where circles can then get set up within Eden, and then that's how we grow. So there's a lot of different ways of growth, and then structuring ourselves here is what I wanted to bring to. And also moving in that direction of getting really clear on a circle what it's meant to do. So when people are talking about codes of conduct and all these different things to organize each other, I think that can exist very clearly within a circle. And that's what makes circles great too, is get really distinct about that. It's actually healthier to say, this is how we're going to communicate, and this is what we're looking for, because then people say, yep, that's the community I want to be a part of. And then that's the attractor that brings the next, million, billion people into these systems, is having clear communities that add value, that are, attracting people to them. And that only works when you get really clear with what you're up to. When you stay broad and open like a protocol should, that's not an attractor necessarily for people, right? It's neutral. Neutral doesn't attract, right? And I think that's important, like kind of distinction here. Our attractors come from the cultures we're setting up. Anyway,
it makes sense. It makes sense, Reiki. Thanks for your insight there. Yeah, we got to get there somehow.
We're getting there right now. So what I'm pointing out is it's resisting the urge to break out and separate the community, but actually hold the complexity and the diversity, and then grow within, if that makes sense. Anyway.
Yeah, but the language thing is hard. It's hard to grow within a different language. There's such a barrier across languages. So I would
absolutely. Say, I think that's something that probably needs to separate out, because then that's more comfortable.
Right. So the one exception maybe is with the languages that really should separate out.
I'm talking when it comes to cultural differences or opinions. you know,
Got it.
it
Yep.
should be this way or that way, etc. All of that could still exist. But when it comes to not being able to communicate with each other, definitely, I think that's something that we just talked about and all agreed on. I was just speaking in addition to. Sorry, I got a little excited because I had some coffee, so I'm speaking really fast too. Anything else that anyone wants to add to this before I keep going just a little bit more on the proposal?
Yeah, keep going. I think I lost your screen share though. You'll have to bring that back up.
Yeah, I stopped sharing it because we are going somewhere else for a moment.
Okay.
And I can't see you guys when I'm screen sharing, so. All right. So I just wanted to quickly go over the 3 horizons. I'm not going to get too deep into it because it's the best attempt I have right now that I've been trying to put together on what we're actually doing here as an Eden community. So when we talk about what we're looking at, what value are added, where we're trying to head, that was the attempt with the Eden 3 horizons here. So to start this whole thing off, you know, where the bylaws are how we do things, it's kind of our rule set. The 3 horizons are what we're aiming to do. So you're seeing this is coming up. It's going to be alive in any group of people showing up to do stuff together. They're going to be asking this question endlessly if it's not already answered. So this is an attempt at answering it. So we started this off by something really important. You know, what can Eden do for you? Why do people want to join Eden and grow membership? So a little list of things there. And extending on it. This is also, I'm just copy and pasting from, you know, the position paper. And also these are things that people were saying in one of the town halls. So I've really just been trying to transcribe things that I've been seeing in our group chats and in conversations with people to put this together. Any questions on either one of those before I just keep going quick?
Good by me.
Sweet. Okay, so Eden 3 horizons. There's a lot that Eden was trying to take on, is taking on, and is doing. So the 3 horizons framework it's used for complex systems and ecosystems when they're trying to, you know, put together a roadmap. A very linear roadmap oftentimes breaks down because people are looking at multiple perspectives. And that's really important for any type of ecosystem to really thrive, is that you're holding multiple perspectives simultaneously. So that's what we actually see here. It's like 3 different synergistic, kind of intertwined, if you will, roadmaps that are happening at the same time. And they're also speaking to what value we're bringing to EOS. So first one being research and development. So this is what we're building with the Eden upvote process and, you know, Sybil resistant and launching multi-language Edens, etc. These things we're developing and researching on. What does that actually mean then? The next level is trust in EOS. I think that's going to be mandatory for us to get to the 3rd horizon of growth, is that we're building trust in this ecosystem. They're like, yep, this is where we want to, you know, run our community governance systems on, build our DeFi platforms on, launch our NFTs on, whatever it is. If they don't have trust in that ecosystem, then people aren't going to be showing up. So that's something else we're working on, is how do you build trust? And when we're building democratic tools, I think democracy is very trusted in the world. So the more democratic we can be, you know, by the people, the more trust we can build. So this is where all our tools, where we're focused on trust and building trust, and the community stuff, people showing up, getting to know each other, showing who they are, having these conversations. All of this is building more and more trust in this process, in you itself, etc. The 3rd horizon, this one might be obvious to everyone, but it's grow. How do we bring in the next million, billion people into Eden and EOS, right? So first, we need to have all the technology there, but we're going to keep building technology, right? And then we've got to build the trust. And then when we have those things, people are going to be attracted here. So this is where we might have cultural subgroups and circles within Eden. So we were just talking about growing that way, where we can set these cultures within Eden. So being in Eden is just being a civil protected human. You're participating in the elections, and then you go about and join a subgroup for, you know, talking about DAO governance or whatever it is. And one of those subgroups I'm advocating for is one that's focused on the Eden incubator. So it might be called the, you know, Eden for All campaign or whatever it is called. But this is a group of people that are helping other communities use all of our tools. So EOS has a lot of tools for launching your own DAO, governance systems, financial systems, doing it on, you know, privacy layers with Zeos and all sorts of awesome stuff. So what we want as an incubator then where communities are like, yep, we want to run our startup city on this tech, or we want to set up a knitting circle and we're really hardcore Web3 group enthusiasts, so we want to do it all as a DAO, or whatever group that wants to use our tools, they can show up to this incubator. There could be a whole lot of epic humans, i.e. the Eden community, ready to help them through that process, right? So that's some massive value add for growing EOS in the future, is helping new communities onboard into this ecosystem, use all of our tools, and bring real value to real people in the real world. And that's how I think we really achieve, sustainable, meaningful growth, is we move beyond speculation, et cetera, and move into, actually helping communities do things that matter to them. So I didn't elaborate much on Eden's first or second horizon. I was leaving this open for people to comment and fill it out, because I'm not, anyway, I don't think I should be speaking for this. So that's why I didn't elaborate here. I only elaborated on the third horizon. But anyway, the first horizon, language-based Edens, we talked about that. The Eden upvote process itself, and building that out and testing it and make sure it's working. This is stuff we're doing right now. You're seeing us make progress today. And then launching that Sybil-resistant NFT, NTT, soulbound token, whatever we're calling it, etc. So this is the first value we're bringing to EOS, because now any other EOS project, if they're like, yep, we want Sybil protected humans to launch on this chain, cool. Now we've added that value to the EOS community. If they want a particular democratic governance system, great, we've added that to the EOS community. Language-based Edens only helps give more people more voice in EOS, great, we've added that to the community. Anyone want to elaborate on the first horizon or speak to anything I've spoken to so far before I keep going?
Just from a tech side, I think that, documenting the code, testing and having just utilities for general infrastructure, and, making sure that the tech is solid. Like, we've already identified a few bugs, we've fixed a few bugs. We've learned a lot about the infrastructure requirements, and documentation of the process, I think, is really important.
Yeah, I think that's worth.
Yeah, I like the general approach. It's a framework that can get built upon and added to. So I appreciate this type of summary and layout. So thank you.
Very reliable is better than solid.
I was just copying your word, but
I'm just rephrasing myself. Thank you.
Solid. Yeah, I'll fix that. Anyway, we're not even using that branding. Awesome. Okay. So second horizon, that's trust in EOS, trust in Web3 in general, because Web3 doesn't even really have a great reputation. So how do you build trust in all of these new systems so that people in the real world use it for things that really matter? It's massively important. I think that's also why we've called the EVM layer, trust. It's great. So one of those things that is not necessarily building a lot of trust. Just kidding. I think it is. It's a great conversation. But the Eden Spark proxy is an example of us, working on that. Is how do you get towards democratic BP selection? Eden upvote for BPs. So maybe this doesn't happen on EOS, but other Antelope chains, and this is where we're headed with the the multi-chain thesis, which is great, might use the Eden upvote process for BPs themselves. So then the election is all the BPs show up, and then they're upvoting each other and picking who should run and be the BP. I think that would be really powerful and really interesting. So other Antelope chains would be able to do that.
Yeah, and it's not just for BPs. You can use the Eden upvote process for other project goals.
Well, and you can imagine that EOS as an entire community does this to say, what is the vision of EOS? Who the hell gets to say what the vision of EOS is? That's ridiculous. When B1 tried to do that, the community didn't necessarily agree with that. So there's no way of doing that. So what if the Eden upvote process for helping EOS as a whole decide what the vision is? 5 people come together, they talk about what their shared vision is. One person forms consensus and says, yeah, let me integrate all of the visions of all 5 of you, and I'll take your shared visions to the next level. By the time we do this and we get to one shared vision, it's integrated all of the perspectives of the entire EOS community. Like, that's really powerful stuff. Like, you see this could be used in a lot of different places. But of course, we need to, build trust in this process itself and figure it all out. Anyway, I can't see you guys, so I might be cutting you off, but keep going, Jesse, if you had other stuff to add.
No, I'm good.
Maybe there's an opportunity for me to plug. I've been working on the Spend Explorer, right? So what I want to do is provide like financial transparency. You said offer trust and transparency, and we've got on-chain data as to who's withdrawing funds from the treasury, and then they can categorize EOSIO token transfers from their accounts and say, well, this is what I spent the money on. So I think that if we want to improve the treasury or increase the treasury, if we want to measure the impact this is having, the Spend Explorer is a way to follow the money, and the basic idea is to improve trust in what Eden is doing. So that's my personal project. Sorry to shill here, but
no, I need more people shilling. That's how I can fill this out. So shill away.
Yeah, there was one from Lovejoy here in the chat, like even say a fractal fiction. Speaking of other uses of the upvote process outside of governance.
What is it? Fractal fiction?
Yeah, basically it's you use the process, you bring a bunch of people together, and I didn't participate, but essentially you break people into small subgroups and they each take an aspect of story creation of fiction writing, and they break it apart, and fractally these pieces are then combined to create a story, but you have disparate groups of humans kind of creating sections of it, which is pretty neat idea.
Yeah. I love it. I mean,
Lovejoy can certainly improve that.
Being able to take a group of people and continually cohere the shared, consensus and reality that they have, like that's, yeah, you could do that for anything. Anything else, Chris?
Yeah, he just, Lovejoy just added, I don't know if it really fits here, but it's novel. No pun intended.
Hey, I could add a lot of value for EOS, Think of all the NFT books we can write.
I personally really love like being thrown into a random group of EOS members and then getting to know them, because we're kind of distant, and like Telegram, helps, but it's not the same as like, hey, you guys got 45 minutes to get to know each other, to understand where you're coming from, what you think is best for EOS. And that for me is just like awesome, because it brings everyone together, and you realize, that this person is out there working for EOS and you didn't know them. So it's fun, and it's in a way, it allows people to meet each other. And I think that's very powerful as well. Like we need more of that. Like, hey, now I'm having a conversation with someone who's also in this community, which I've never met before. And we're sharing ideas. That cross-pollination of ideas, I think is really, one of the things that draws my attention towards Eden.
Yeah, and it also removes a lot of the negative toxicity we see. People tend to be really aggressive keyboard warriors when they're hiding behind a pseudonym. And even if they didn't have to show their face on an Eden call, if you still show up and you see the other person's face you're talking to and they can hear your voice, I think it really does tend to diffuse some of the intensity that we see. Like there's someone who's been in the chats recently, aggressive, pretty not overly respectful in their tone and some of the language. And they joined our Helios Farce, the Twitter Spaces we had today, and I said, "Hey, I recognize your initialism, like it was a couple letters for their name." And I said, "You've had some strong words, basically, and by all means, join the stage and just talk about it. Like, tell me face to face what you'd like to say." And took the mic and said, "I've got nothing to say. I'll just watch." And it's like you had a lot to say in chat, but now you've got me, and here's this great opportunity. Say what you want to say, and you got nothing to say. So I think I think we just have to broach that idea to say what you want to say, but you might say it in a slightly more respectful and actually trying to find a solution. Like oftentimes people are chatting and they have no interest in the solution. They just want to be angry. I don't know what that is about digital spaces and why that brings out that in people, but it's certainly there. And I think there's something said about this process that diffuses that.
And then, there's something else we need to be really mindful of. I mean, for those of us that are looking at this as revolutionary technology, should we start to succeed in that goal, the very typical playbook of taking down activist groups is to infiltrate that and be an asshole. And I learned this directly. Like I was in the military a lifetime ago. And part of our training was literally teaching us how to infiltrate activist groups and, cause a ruckus and give them a bad reputation, et cetera, and how to take them down, and also cause infighting. It's literally part of the playbook. So whether or not we're thinking about that, we need to have some community processes to prevent that, because as we succeed, that's going to only increase. And if we don't have defenses for that, then every other activist community who went into these things naively, they got attacked and brought down and had all this drama and spent years fighting with each other, et cetera, and didn't succeed in their mission. So it's just something very practical and pragmatic to consider too, is what does the culture look like? What process do we have? So this is also when we talk about when we remove people. But that's silly, like we can defend against that. But I think what you actually do is you transform it up front. So when people are doing the induction ceremony, something else I think we could add is a brief intro about yourself. What attracted you here? What are you passionate about? What are you excited about? So we have this concept of network to earn, but we're also wanting people to watch the videos for civil protection. Well, how about the videos actually be an introduction that's very, short, sweet, beautiful, to the point. And then you get to see who's part of this community, who you might be able to collaborate with, what their interests are, and start building different circles and project groups, et cetera, based off this. So it's, when we think about the rules of this game and how it's set up, if we're constantly thinking it from that perspective of how do we get to know each other, collaborate better, form stronger relate. Anyway, Javi, you had something, so I'm going to cut myself off. Go.
I was going to say, when EOS community conference, that, like 2023, that'd be awesome. Like, hey, I've been to a couple, and I think it's great to meet people in person. And that's one of the great things about Eden, is that it allows us to come closer together and get to know each other. So I didn't really have anything important to say. I just, other than community, meeting each other is paramount.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting comment, Ricky. I'm not studied enough in historical history in terms of like war tactics and military. It's not my thing, but this idea of deliberately seeding someone into a community just to stir up shit. I wonder if that could be done in the Eden community as it stands now. Seems unlikely, but maybe it could be done. And then here's a question I have though. How do you prevent that? So it's like, how do you, if we're to spin up a new Eden, which I won't lie, I'm thinking a lot about, like starting these other languages, like what lessons can we learn from this Eden? Because I feel like there's a lot of lessons that are being presented right now in real time and really seeing it. How do you add friction, which you don't want to add? This idea that we want to make it as easy as possible for people to become a member, but then when they do, it makes it really easy to have these agent provocateurs join. Provocateurs. So what do you think? Is there any, like, do your point have say what you want to be here, but that doesn't really add a lot of, like, I don't know, how do we fix that?
No, so we're doing it with the proposed bylaw change, in the expanding the scope of dispute resolution, and the community wanted to do a code of conduct. If we can get a really solid code of conduct and have parameters around removing members for being agent provocateurs, which would violate our code of conduct, assuming that would violate our code of conduct, then I think we're already on the path to protect the community in that regard.
Yeah, and there's a double-edged sword here. I don't want us to think too much about this, because then it turns into like, oh, you have a conflicting opinion from me, or you're a planted agent or whatever the fuck. So I think it's really important to set up membranes for community membership. Cultures have been doing this since time immemorial. It's what rites of passage were, from childhood to manhood, et cetera. There's a lot of them for how you get through the membrane to get certain rights. So you actually make it really difficult to become a member. So this is where then it conflicts. So the Eden protocol, like I was talking about before, being able to show up to an election, et cetera, I think that's very open. Let that be really easy to get into, because that's just getting like, yes, I'm civil protected. But then the circles and the cultural groups and the DAOs, everything, it's really ideal to actually have closed membership and to be really difficult to get into them, depending on it. Because that's actually an attractor too. People who are really talented, they have a limited amount of time, and they want to know that they're spending their time effectively. And if they're like, hey, there's this open community where anyone can show up and waste your time with endless dialogue, it's like, well, I don't want to spend my time there. But if you know that it's like, these are the people we're looking for, this is the traits, this is why they're qualified, this is why they're important, etc., those things are an attractor for certain people. But they're also a detractor for other people, which is why it's important that we have a mass diversity of different circles with different membership, who they're looking for. All of these people could be part of Eden itself as a protocol. But then when you have your groups, the closed membership, that's where most of the work starts happening. So that we don't have these like open chats where you're expected to come spend all your time. Now your time is really spent within these circle groups, these cultural groups where you're focused on some particular, very clear mission and agenda, right? Anyway, so that's how I think we could start growing to start meeting all of these diverse needs without interfering with the, the protocol itself, if you will.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that's something we really need to, it's become apparent, I think, that we want to iterate on this tool. We want to iterate on the efficacy of this thing as a governance tool. It came up a lot in the Helios spaces, again, was worker proposal system versus governance tool and the importance of iteration. And I think we need to learn lessons like this current Eden. I think it would be a bit naive to assume that this is going to be the final state of Eden as a tool, as a community building thing. Of course, this is the very first one. So I think, that's why it's an experiment, and it's V0.1 of this thing, right? So we need to start to, I like what you're saying, Reiki, about this idea of these membranes, and that you can't, that's hard to change on the fly. The other thing about making these types of changes, these are fundamental changes. That's tough to now get consensus on and buy-in on. And I think it speaks to again, there's a lot of lessons here, and maybe it's start to peel this back a bit. And if we were to do this over again, what would that look like? What do these membranes look like? What are the rites of passage, to your point? How can that be smart contract? How can that more tables in the membership table that then allow, and the election actually is looking at those to give certain ability to move on in a governance election? Like, sorry, you're just a junior member at this stage. You can't be voted for. It's grayed out of the UI. Like, it gets complicated now to make these types of changes. But it seems to me that's almost where this kind of needs to go in a way, to iterate on this membrane idea.
Well, and that's what I like about this. Sorry, how'd it go?
Well, I'm just thinking inductions. Inductions are really important. Like, who can help me with an induction? Yeah, I'll jump on, man. Let them in. Yeah, who are you? I don't know. Like, hey, wait a minute. Like, if we can really control the inductions, we want to grow the community, but we prefer quality over quantity. That's my opinion. And inductions are key, right? Because that's where we're opening the door to a new member, right? And we don't want to hang out with like people who are here to like work against us, right? We obviously want to hang out with people who are rowing in the same boat, and we're all kind of like trying to go after the same common goal. Yes, we might have different opinions. We need to be able to manage that, but like, inductions are key. So do not like underestimate the importance of inductions. The other thing is we have this remove member action now, and we've tested it. We've got a dispute resolution system. Yeah, we kicked out Jesse on the jungle testnet. Like, who do we kick out? Yeah, Jesse, you're out, right? Just a test, fine. But now if we deploy that on the mainnet, and we're like, okay, we want to put this into practice, that is such a difficult process, because it's like, well, are you censoring, or, well, it's about free speech? I thought this was an open group where our voices mattered, and then we're going to kick someone out. I'm interested in seeing how that plays out in real life. Like, how, I don't want to be in a group where, someone's going to be like, oh, we don't like you, you're out. No one wants that. But at the same time, we got to protect the group. So, I mean, there's a lot of experimentation to be done here. And I just think inductions are important. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, I wonder a way of connecting that, just providing us all information. That's all this is. If you inducted a member and that member was removed, then we send an NTT to all of those who witnessed and, and brought that member in, just to recognize it. Hey, here's an NTT that you've invited someone who's been removed. And then you can imagine if someone starts collecting a lot of those and they go like, hey, this guy is, bringing a lot of shitty people into the community. And all we're doing is replicating standard social dynamics. If you've got a friend group, your best friend brings someone over and they come and crash your house and cause damage to it. You're like, you're the one that invited that dude into my house. Like, I don't know if I trust you as much. This is just something we do as, social species. So it is interesting to say like, okay, we could just reflect that. Let's not create any punishments for that. It's a little bit weird. And I don't know if everyone needs to be responsible for who they invite in necessarily, but at least really thoughtful. And I think being able to have that, signal that you've invited someone who's been removed is probably enough for people to be like, yeah, I don't want you to mark my reputation. I'm going to be really clear that, you know, you're a quality person and you're not a provocateur, et cetera, before I bring you in, you know?
It's a really great point, because we need to create this this cultural memory, this sort of societal memory of what has happened in the past. I mean, that's come up now, even the idea that elections are taking place, and what did you do last time? Like, what did you do with your money before? Like, are you being held to account based on your previous promises? Not really, because there's no proper record. Even now, I've had this spreadsheet. I've shared it numerous times in the chat. Hey, everybody, let me know what you've done with your promises, because we can update the spreadsheet and you can refer to that during this election in a week. And I have almost no one come responding like, okay, here's a summary of what I did. So like, we need to do better at this accountability piece. And to your point about membership induction, yeah, if you invite someone who totally sucks, it should be a memory. It doesn't have to be punitive, but it's a memory that can be referenced later on.
My invitation for that is, if there's something that we want as a community and people aren't showing up to do it, then the incentives aren't there. How do we get that information and do it in a fun way where the incentives are aligned? So I really hate the, like, you should do this, go and do that, like that type of language. Free people don't do that shit. So like, it's really not going to work. So I think it's like, you should use the Spend Explorer. If people aren't rushing to do it, why not? So maybe, like, how do we turn it more into a game that using the Spend Explorer becomes a fun experience where people are encouraged to do it and there's a positive reward outcome for doing it, whether that's a social response or something. So maybe there's even like a video we do where we display the people of what they've done. You know, if they went and used the Spend Explorer, we're going to talk about it. We're going to highlight who they are, what they're up to, and we're going to have like an end of year review, or sorry, rather an end of season review every cycle. And everyone who shared something there, we're going to, you know, give them props. But also, this is a fun video. This is talking about all the progress we're making. It helps everyone know who's doing what, so you get informed of what's happening in the ecosystem. You know, this comes from like permaculture, where you want every element of your game has multiple functions. So I think before we add an element, like, hey, how do we track who's doing what? Let's make sure it has a whole lot of functions, that it's serving our community a bunch of different ways. So I think that's kind of something like an end of season review might be a valuable way of getting people to use that tool. And again, you use the tool, you get included in it.
Right, I like the idea of like a closing. Okay, term's over. Let's get everyone together and talk about what happened, what we did, and kind of like report back to the community. And it's also a way of saying like, well, you've got nothing to show, or like, dude, you did an amazing job, man. You know, and then people can make up their minds. So like, well, what do I find more valuable based on, you know, contributions I've seen? So yeah, I'm looking forward to what the next set of CDs might like organize in terms of like bringing everyone together, L1s and chief delegates and the broader community, and having more spaces where people can, because we have a lot of spaces to talk, but I don't know if we're communicating these things specifically that Reiki's talking about, which I find really important.
Yeah, definitely. And I think all we've really been elaborating on, just to re-clarify where we're at here, is a roadmap, where we're headed, what is Eden doing, because right now we're still putting our proposal together for the ENF. So right now we're talking about, you know, future projecting all the stuff we could be adding. So ideally this video we actually also will cut out and share as part of our proposal for this. So let me actually come back to the screen sharing for the third horizon. This is really the long term of where we could go, and what we want to work towards is what the third horizon is really about. And this is where I think the most value for our EOS is going to come, and for Eden itself and all of us, and why we're here. All right, so the third horizon we talked about is about growing. We can grow in a couple different ways by creating these subgroups and circles within Eden. We just opined a whole lot about these, you know, what they could look like, and they can have their own funding and all sorts of other stuff. And you can also look at a circle as kind of a mini startup too. So a circle might form with just 3 people within Eden, then maybe it grows to 20 people and you guys are producing a whole lot of projects. Well, maybe it could spin out of Eden. And then Eden itself becomes an incubator for EOS projects in this way. So they can get started within Eden, incubate their idea, and then spin out and maybe go direct to the ENF and get funding or something like that, right? So that's a way of growing the EOS ecosystem, and then also this Eden incubator. So to keep talking about this, there's so many different communities that are like, yep, Web3, but sorry, I don't have 7 years to get caught up with everything that's happening and how all these tools work, so I can't use it. There's a massive demand, and I'm dealing with this on a regular basis. I've been part of HIFA for a while, so we've been talking with these communities, and it's just we're so backlogged and so understaffed with people who really understand all the tools and how they work. Well, that's what we have in Eden community. And this is also a really sustainable funding source too, because these communities would be willing and are willing to pay for this service, right? So this is helping new people both come into our ecosystem and grow EOS and bring real communities out there. So it's not just recycling, the Web3 community. Now this is bringing in people who don't know anything about Web3, but they want, trusted, democratic, new economic systems. They want to be able to launch their, co-ops or different communities in a whole bunch of different ways, but they don't have the lawyers to be able to set it up with a legal entity. Well, now with the Wyoming DAO LLC and other legal entities like that, you can set up a DAO, design it in a really unique way that your community wants, and it saves you, hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees to do the same thing. So it's a massive value prop that I think we're, perfectly suited for. So that's just basically what's elaborated here and what that process could look like, where people show up and they're like, yep, I love this Eden plus DAO on EOS. I love this idea. So this is what we're actually designing right now, is what this process looks like for another community to come here and use our tools. So it's very meta. We're designing the process and testing it real time. So the Eden playoffs, or the political playoffs that we're testing all the time, is how a community actually selects their launch team. So existing communities out there that might already have tens of thousands of members, this political playoff process is perfect for those membership groups to be able to select who's going to go and launch their, DAO together. So this is how you then find the 5 to 7 people who then go on and actually join the incubator itself. So this group of 7 people or whatever it is, then is actually joining calls with Eden members, and we're walking them through the process, right? And that's what they would be paying for too. So we take them through the whole process of understanding our DAO tooling, all the different DAO tooling that's available on EOS. Do they want it private or not? So this is where Zeos can come in, and do they want DeFi tools or not, like etc. So EOS community members who are really aware of all the tools across EOS is perfect here. Also, this is, goes without saying, I imagine this is an incredible value add for EOS as a whole network, because then communities can really take advantage of all of the different projects, right? So that we help them go ahead and make their DAO, and then we help them through the process of inviting their community in to join their DAO. So after they've set it all up, they know what their DAO looks like. They have roles for community members to fill out. They've maybe even created all the quests, etc. So now they have this ecosystem that's ready to invite the 10,000 members or whatever they have in their community to come and fill out, etc. So this is like a new career path that's kind of available. Another value add for becoming an Eden member, is this idea that you're a consensus builder, or you're an infinite game designer, or whatever you want to call this role. Maybe it's a DAO, consultant if you want to be boring. But so this is a new career path that's in high demand right now. It's only going to grow in demand as Web3 grows. So let's get at the forefront of this. So another thing that I think Eden itself as a community could be doing is hosting sessions with people who are very knowledgeable in this space. That could really help us learn more, up-level our skills together and become better, consultants, if you will. So then ongoing training to help us become these decentralized governance consultants. This is also increasing our knowledge of decentralized governance, how to create consensus, and how to be good members of any community, which then benefits EOS because we're training people within EOS to be better members of EOS, which is obviously a very clear value add as we're up-leveling our skills. And inviting that. So other people who are attracted to this, that want to be around a whole bunch of people who are really knowledgeable in this space and pushing the envelope forward, like they're going to be attracted to EOS. And this is what's going to help us stand out and help us have our comeback. Like we got to lead in something. I think if we just keep trying to catch up to other blockchains, like we're playing catch up. We need to lead in something. And I think this is a real big opportunity here. Keep going here. And this is also how we attract other DAOs. So if we have a really awesome, clear process like this, then other DAOs that are in other ecosystems right now that are paying fees to do on-chain governance and aren't really doing it as well as they could be in our ecosystem, at least in my opinion, we can actually attract them and give them the tools. So it could be a way of also growing EOS in our ecosystem by going and saying, yep, you tired of on-chain proposal fees being too high, and et cetera, a whole bunch of different things that we could advocate on. Okay, I think that's a lot. So I'll pause there. Thoughts, feedback, anything?
It's a lot. I think you've put a ton of time into this, and I think it's very appreciated. And I hope you run next season to be a CD again, Reiki. I want to see you keep going on this.
Super undetermined at this point. It's, I'm a new father right now, and I'm having to constantly weigh, spending time with my son in this world, and it's been freaking a ride. But anyway, I don't know. I'm still sitting on that one.
I think that the growth horizon is really about bringing in new people into EOS, right? And I see a lot of like recycling of the same characters and all the different things going on in EOS. And it's like, well, a lot of people are like, well, you're not representative of the EOS community. Well, what is the EOS community? How big is it? How many members do we actually have? Like, how many people are actually out there? Yeah, there's millions of accounts, but like, who are these people? How many of us are there out there? And it's really hard to determine. But I think that, what's key here is making EOS attractive to people outside of EOS, right? And like, yes, we need to get our shit together before people would even consider joining EOS, but that's the end goal. And I think this growth thing is like, okay, we've got something that we can provide people outside of EOS. And if Eden can be a magnet of people outside of EOS to arrive, then yes, that's where we need to go. Like, that's going to bring up, everyone's going to be happy if that happens. And, that's for me, this whole growth thing, like, is about people who don't know anything about EOS, who all of a sudden learn about it. And all of a sudden new faces participating, contributing, not just the same group talking over above each other all the time. I think we're actually not a very big community in EOS, to be frank. Yes, the numbers might say, oh, well, thousands of members would be more representative. Like, I don't even know if we have those, like, to be honest. But I hope we do, and they're just watching on the sidelines. But yeah, growing outside of EOS, that's a great end goal. So I really like what you presented, and good work, Reiki. Thank you.
I think we do, Javier. I think a lot of people watch on the sidelines. Twitter came out with a statistic that over 90% of the people view tweets and do not even like or retweet or engage at all. And I think that's pretty similar to what's going on in the EOS community and other communities. Our challenge is converting these viewers only into some sort of participation. We need incentives. I think we're on the right track here. We just need the fuel to do it.
Yeah, totally agree. Well said, Javi. You totally nailed it. And I think, Reiki, exactly, like this growth thing, we've heard this discussion of like the killer app in blockchain, right? It's kind of this is almost like it's a silly phrase because there's going to be many killer apps. And so I think really the question we should be asking ourselves is, what can Eden as a tool, as a process, as a thing onto the EOS blockchain, what can it add as an app? And I fully believe, and some don't agree with this, but I think that this is one of the killer apps that EOS can bring. No one else has this yet. We are at the forefront of a really unique process that brings communities together, that has multiple applications, from fractal fiction to determining philanthropic giving, to selecting your homeowners association leader, to selecting humans to help influence governance on a blockchain. And there's so many applications, and we are absolutely at the forefront. I think, yeah,
I'm going to make a plug too and share one more application, and then please keep going. Just because I think it's good timing. So this is personally, just getting this is why I came to Eden anyway. Why I got excited about Eden is this is what we've been working on in another part of the USIO, Antelope world. So we were running on Telos for forever, doing seeds. And this is what we're working with Haifa, is helping these land-based projects set up their own different economic systems and different local communities, which is pretty great. So like example, a 4,000 acre one in Nicaragua, or 684 in Vilcabamba, Ecuador, etc. So there's a whole bunch of different projects all over the globe, different legal systems, etc. That are all looking for these tools to launch their own economic and governance systems, alternatives to the failing nation states you see today and the freaking joke that we call politics, Instead of complaining about it, this is just running a whole bunch of different experiments, demonstrating a different way of doing it. So this is what I would personally love to bring to Eden, and why I came here and why I think it's all interesting is what you're building here, what we're building here is the foundation that all these communities need. And this is just season 1, and this is us. I think we had about 50 applications. We narrowed it down to 13, which you see here. But there are hundreds and thousands that we're connected with that want this technology, want what we're building, and would absolutely love it. If they can design their own financial and governance systems, do it in a trusted, democratic way, have all this tooling that's fee-free to use on chain. Like, we have all of this tech to run a totally different civilization. It's freaking great. So to start showcasing that and putting it all together, I think is the best thing Eden could be doing, in my opinion. So that's what I put in kind of Horizon 3, and what I would stay focused on here is like, how does this tools actually matter to help these communities on the ground organize in a different way to fundamentally change their day-to-day life? Like, how do we coordinate as a community to grow food and meet our food need? Local and global supply chains are breaking right now. Do we want to starve when that happens, or do we want to thrive? Well, we thrive if we can coordinate locally to make sure we can produce all of our needs. This technology we're building helps us do that. So like, this is existential crises that 8 billion people on the planet are going to start facing here soon. Like, that's the billions of people that can come on. That's the killer app, is how do we fix humanity's major crises? We don't fucking know how we fix it, but we need to start experimenting with a whole bunch of diversity of alternatives. That's how we're going to figure this out. And what Eden as an incubator and what we're doing and we're building the tools for is to facilitate this. It's, very risky, if you're looking at it from like a business perspective and something to back, but the upside is infinite. So anyway, I think that's our pitch for why I think Eden's worth funding if we head in this direction.
100%, man. Well said. Exactly. We get stuck in these myopic internal battles and disputes around nuance. And it's like, so like, we are absolutely missing the forest through the trees when we get stuck in these little back and forths of, let's just step back for a second. And what you've just said, how important is that? How great is this opportunity we have to do something meaningful? And if anything, that should really shed away some of these differences that are really irrelevant when it comes to the bigger picture. So thank you for what you're doing. You should plug your YouTube channel you've got, because I watched a lot of the regenerative renaissance stuff you did. I think you should plug it for folks, because there's a lot of great videos there of you running through this basically incubator program you've been putting on.
Well, and this is my secret agenda. There's 10,000 people that signed up for Seeds. We had a zero marketing budget. We never even tried to start marketing because the tech never got ready. So still was like, not fully what we wanted. So if Eden keeps going well, that's who I'd like to invite. We had 450 different organizations reach out to us over the years being like, yep, we want this tech. We just couldn't handle any of it. We didn't have it all ready. So it's like, that's been on the back burner, that if Eden gets it right, like, we can bring all of that in and start, throwing compost on this garden, if you will. But yeah, I like to see the conflict. It's all helpful because our game requires us having that conflict in order to test it live, if you will. So I don't even think we want to remove the conflict necessarily. I think we want to change our perspective about the conflict as it's part of the game. It's helpful. It actually helps us test our processes to see if they're working. So if we have, competing interests real time as we're building it, that's the environment we need to build it under. That's also one of the reasons I came back here rather than working with a super aligned community, which is where I've been, like people who kind of already see it the same way. You're myopic because you don't see the challenges, right? So that's how you get naivety. So I think having this diversity of competing interests, this is the chamber, this is the, the necessary ingredients, if you will, to actually figure this out. So I think we would lose if we kicked out a particular member. But if we could show that we can find consensus and align incentives and do things, fundamentally better in this environment that's so, at conflict, well, then that's a representation of the real world. How the fuck are we going to build an example that teaches the US and China how to coordinate and collaborate for shared incentives if we can't figure it out ourselves at a micro scale that's not even at nearly a level of that conflict? But if we can figure out with ourselves, then the process of figuring that out is ridiculously valuable.
Yeah, I think I just more mean it's reframing the intention of the conflict. Sometimes we just get tunneled into one little thing. And it's like, no, wait a second. If we just back a second, we'll have a more productive conflict because it's actually based on something that's less pigeonholed into one little thing. I think you're right. The conflict is actually necessary, but it's just we get stuck sometimes, and we're missing what we should really be having conflict over. But I mean, to each their own.
Yeah, 100% agree. Conflict can have incredible positive outcomes, managed right, and done under the right guidelines and like underlying values. So conflict should be encouraged, but resolution should be, why it's encouraged, right? To have that outcome.
And it's facilitated. So there's a whole process that we were putting together in the seeds DAO world is conflict evolution. So it's a way of looking at conflict as an opportunity for those in conflict to both evolve. That's always the case. If there's a conflict between two parties, both of them have an opportunity to evolve. Like you see the most enlightened gurus or whatever, they can never be in conflict with someone else because like they won't even allow it. So like if they choose just themselves to opt out of that conflict, then they can heal it just that way. Doesn't matter. That gets too spiritual. The point is that it's always an opportunity for us to grow. And if we look at it that way, then it becomes this positive sum game. That every time we get this tension, it's an opportunity for us to evolve as individuals and evolve the game itself. And this is how it gets better and better over time. But if we look at that conflict as something that's bad and we have to stop and prevent and heal or whatever the word we want to use, then you get stuck in that eddy where you're kind of running in circles, and that's what burns everyone out. But every time you come to a point of conflict, if you say, yep, this is something for us to learn, what are we meant to learn here? Like, oh, fuck yeah, like, my perspective was limited, so I can, see the world in a more accurate way. That's awesome. That helps us, become better humans. And anyway, and if we can work through that process and then use that frame to develop the technology we're developing, then the tools we're building are going to be fundamentally better tools because the people who built them were fundamentally better people. So I think we can't, detach the tools we're building from who we are and how we approach building those tools. So even when we talk about building all these dApps and stuff, like we first have to talk about who are we, what challenges are we trying to solve, and how are we going to go about solving them? And then we let that process inform what the tools actually look like, right? Anyway, I got excited about all that. So what I want to do is just one circle. We can close out any more thoughts or anything you want to bring. If anyone from the community has any questions, please bring them up as comments, and then we can close out for today. So maybe Chris, Javi, Jesse, take 5 minutes or however long you want and close out.
Cool. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing, Reiki. As always, you're awesome at this. I think we've covered a lot of ground. We've made progress. 11% distribution rate. I hope the community is happy about that. And yeah, excited about this. Excited about putting forward a proper MSIG to request funds from the ENF with a clear roadmap that articulates the use case and the value proposition that we're trying to present. And best of luck to January 7th participants. If you're watching, become a member. If this is, you still have time. You've got time. Reach out. You've got until January 6th to opt in, so you can become a member prior to that and opt in. And we want participation. In the end, this experiment is only as useful as we experiment with it. We need people to join and test this sucker out. We've got 61 people opted in right now for the next election, and so I think we could. This could be a really great turnout. There's over 500,000 EOS in our treasury, so there's a pile there. There's a honeypot. Join and make your stake or your claim, your quest to become a delegate to receive some of that. So yeah, thank you. Go ahead, Javi.
No, just really excited about the next election. I think this is a really important one. They're always so much fun, and I really look forward to everyone participating, and I trust the process to come up with some amazing representatives. I just want to say that, if anyone's interested in emceeing this election, we do have that open position. If you're listening, please reach out. We'd love to have someone moderate the room, and that is open for applications right now. And we'll put out a bounty so that people are paid for their time. And also this tech support position we're looking for. If you're interested in applying, please reach out. And yeah, I'm really happy to be a part of Eden during this term. I think we accomplished a lot, and I'm really looking forward to the next election and what the next set of chief delegates can contribute as well, and here to help them as well. Thank you.
Hey everyone. yeah, just want to say kind of similar things. Please join the next election. It's always a fun time. It's always my favorite time of the quarter when we do these Eden elections. So super looking forward to it. Hopefully the SBT system is smooth and everyone likes everything about it, including the artwork, which is almost complete. I will share it on our call on Wednesday. And yeah, good luck, everyone. And thanks for being part of the Eden community.
Awesome. I think we made a lot of progress today. And I guess in summary, we'll share this video and the Eden, the 3 horizons to the ENF and ask them for 50K. Put that in the proposal, but it's a commitment for 500K over 10 months. And then they can just decide for themselves if they think the experiment is continually worth funding. So it's just kind of up to us to keep making progress on this roadmap, delivering value to EOS and showcasing it. And as long as ENF is happy, they can continue paying 50K a month into the pot. Does anyone have any changes to that proposal? Is that what we want to present?
Yep, sounds good by me.
Awesome. I saw a thumbs up from Javi. Jesse, on board?
Yes, gradual approach. I was like, yep.
Awesome. And then one last invitation for the community. When watching this, we're starting a kind of a study group, if you will, but it's going to be a lot of fun. We'll have some deep, awesome philosophical, but yet fundamental questions about how we show up here and what we're doing with Eden. So I've shared in the members chat some videos that we can watch, and then other members can start sharing videos too that they think are very relevant for what's going on in our community, what we might be able to learn from, and then we can change. Well, I want to nudge the culture more into like what's constructive. How do we keep learning? How do we keep evolving? And less towards this, he said, she said, and kind of infighting. Though there's some value there. So the point is I'd love to kind of drive that. So anyone else who wants to get on that train and start these study groups and be part of that, there's an invitation for next Wednesday, the first one. And then that might be attached to our CD call right after it. So awesome. Anything else for anyone else to add or plug before we go?
Great work, everybody. One more call to go. This has been a fun 3 months.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the plug for next week is we're all going to do a summary of our terms. So that's our time to be able to share what we've done and what we might do in the next term, or what we hope that other CDs kind of address next term. So this is a helpful video for future CDs to be able to also recap, be like, okay, that's what you worked on. This is the torch I'm picking up. This is things that that we could look at and you suggested for us to look at, etc. So it's kind of like a debrief for the next CDs and for the community. Are we on board for that?
Yep. Yeah, we can just coordinate, figure out a time. Awesome. I'll shut her down.
Yep.
Thanks, everybody.
Cheers, y'all.
Bye, everyone.